So yeah, everyone, they should know what time it is. It's the Milkman. Right now we have a guest on the Milkman TV, and I'm honored for him to be here because he has a compelling story, and he's a representation of what it looks like when the academic community comes together and supports one of their own. So right now we have Aaron Yao. Aaron, again, thanks for coming on to the show. Thanks for doing this interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure. So, Aaron, just for a brief summary, you are a uWaterloo student. You're in second year,
Yeah, second year optometry, yes.
optometry, and you're from Vancouver.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, nice, nice. So, Aaron, for people who don't know, you were, for lack of better words, can we say finessed of $100,000?
Yeah, finesse, scammed.
Finesse,
Yeah,
scammed.
however you
So
want to put it, yeah.
exactly. Okay, so can you give us the meat and potatoes of the story? Can you give us a rundown of the beginning to the end?
Ah, okay, it's gonna be a bit long.
Yeah, we have
Uh,
all the time in the world.
Basically, so somewhere in September this year, last year, I guess, last year, I got a call from UPS. Someone, I'm gonna have to say things like they were at the time. I thought I received a call from UPS.
Right.
And the person wasn't a robot person, just a normal human being. And they said that, hey, we got a package that was flagged in China and said that this package contained, suspicious materials. They gave us a call and they said they can't allow this through customs. And they contacted me saying like, what did you send? And basically, I just said that I didn't send anything. I have relatives in China, not in the part of China that they sent the package to, but they said, well, we're going to need you to verify this package is yours. And I said, no, it's not. It's 100% not mine. I asked, when was the package sent? The package was sent while I was working. So I'm like, there's no way I sent this. And then I asked, okay, if this was sent, supposedly in my name, what's the information that you have on file? Because you need information in order to send something through the mail. And they're like, okay, is your name Aaron Yao? Yeah, it is. Do you live at, this address here in Burnaby? Yeah, that's my address. Is this your passport number? And I said, yeah, that's my passport number. Is this your phone number? And like, yeah, that's my phone number. And so I started panicking. It's like, holy shit, someone took, sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, whatever you want to
Someone
do.
someone took my personal information, and I was starting to get terrified. Questions started running through my mind. It's like, how long have they had my information? What else have they been doing? If someone sent a package using my identity, what else have they sent? What else have they done with it that I don't know about? How long has this been going on? And I started freaking out, for lack of a better term. And I asked them, okay, this isn't mine. Someone took my identity. What do I do to, tell the police or the customs agency on the other end that, this isn't mine? And they basically, the guy on the phone was just like, I don't know. If I were you, I'd contact the police. And I'm like, okay, well, next question is, which police do I contact? Do I contact the Canadian police? Do I contact the Chinese police? Because the package is in China, right? And
So
he's like,
sorry, was all this in Mandarin or Cantonese?
all of this was in Mandarin at first, and then I'm like, my Chinese isn't really that great, do you know how to speak English? He's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can speak English, and I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, fair enough, right? This UPS store, I asked them for the address too because it's a little bit suspicious. I'm like, where's your address? They gave the UPS address of a branch in downtown Vancouver, and I'm like, okay, yeah, he's a Vancouver Asian, Canadian-born Asian or China.
Chinese
Canadian-born
born.
Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, he's probably just like me. He just, he knows a little bit of Chinese and he speaks English. I'm like, great. Okay, can we speak English from now on? And so he spoke English to me, but everything from then on was spoken in Chinese.
Okay.
So everyone else that I contact from here on out spoke Chinese. And I basically said, okay, I don't know who to contact. Do I contact Chinese police? Do I contact Canadian police? He's like, I don't know either. He's really ambivalent about this. He's like, if I were you, I'd contact the Chinese police because the package is on their side. They can handle it better. Like, what's Canadian police going to do in the Chinese customs? Like, they have no power there. So it's like, okay, fine, fair enough. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I tried to look up some information about how to contact the police, and I had no clue. I couldn't figure out anything. And so I asked if he knew any way of contacting the police because obviously somehow they contacted him, right?
Right.
Or at least their branch. And so I'm like, can you call them back? And he's like, okay, sure, hold on. So he called them back. He transferred the line to them somehow, and that should have been my first red flag. Is how in the world does UPS transfer to the police or the customs agency in another country? Like that should have been the first red flag. But I was too panicked at the time to figure this out.
Yeah,
So I'm like,
sorry to
okay,
cut you
great,
off.
thank
I
you.
was about to say that, like, so many things are going through your mind. In hindsight, it's 2020. When you look back and say, "Oh my gosh, I should have done this," or this was proof that things didn't connect. But you know, when you're running on emotions, and the emotions are probably high, like who stole my identity, what's going on, is very hard to have that clarity. But sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to
Yeah,
add
yeah,
that.
no, you're totally correct. And that's something that I also realized after the fact, when I was sitting in my room unable to sleep at night because of all this. Like it's just like how how many things did you miss because you were emotional, right? Like anyone with common sense sitting now watching the viewers would be like, hey, that's kind of fishy. You should really talk to someone else about that. And it's like, yeah, you definitely should. First thing you should do if you ever feel like anything is off, right? Someone claims you did something you didn't, I don't know, CRA messages you for like, tax fraud or tax evasion or something like that. Something you feel like you didn't do, just talk to someone else about it. Get a fresh pair of eyes on it. Um, but yeah, I was the only thing that was going through my mind was just like, I'm gonna go to prison or something for something I didn't do.
Hmm.
Um, this is gonna be some suspicious package. They're gonna open it and find drugs or something like that. I'm gonna be just like ruined because someone took my identity. But yeah, so they transferred me to the Chinese police, and the Chinese police over there. For anyone wondering, it's a Xi'an province, but they said that, hey, we're the police from the Xi'an province. Why are you calling us? And then I said, okay, let me explain the situation again. Someone took my identity from VPS, whatever. Apparently, there's a package that you're currently holding that was stopped because it's suspicious. And I'm like, they're like, okay, let me create a case file. And I'm used to hearing about scams that want your personal information, right? Give me your PIN number, give me your banking information, give me your, whatever. And then this police didn't ask for anything. He asked for like the bare minimum that you would expect for opening a case file, the same that the Waterloo police did for me. It's like, okay, what's your name? What's your address? What's your phone number? Tell me the details of the events. And I'm like, okay, I told them that. They didn't ask for any sort of like information. The only thing they said was like, okay, what was the passport information? And I figured, if my identity is already stolen, right, I could tell them my passport information and then go get a new passport or something. But so that's the only key piece of information that I gave out
But
that I
they
think was
asked you
the
originally, right? The first person who contacted
yeah,
you.
first person already knew it. So I'm not too worried about that leaking further information,
Yeah.
but I suppose it confirmed it for them either way.
Hmm.
Um, Anyways, so I'm talking to this police officer, and then he basically goes like, okay, I'm gonna set up this case file for you, and then I'll contact you later to see if there's any updates or what we can do about the customs problem. And I'm like, okay, great, thank you. And then he contacts me a little while later, and he's like, are you sure this is your passport number and your name is Aaron? Like, is this your Chinese name? And I said, I'm like, yeah, that's my Chinese name. And he's like, okay, wait, hold on. And he basically transfers me to another officer that he says was his captain. And the captain goes like, okay, um, I'm gonna be straight with you right now. Your name, when we put it into the system, was flagged uh, as a potential criminal suspect for an ongoing investigation. And I'm like, okay, what the hell? I'm here just trying to get my package sorted, and apparently I'm implicit in some sort of
Yeah.
criminal activity in China. And I'm
Right.
like, what the hell have they been doing with my information? And then he's like, okay, there's a guy who was caught in China for laundering money. And he basically said that you gave him your personal information to set up a bank account in this insert legitimate Chinese bank at this bank. And he opened an account using your identity and your information. And this information and the account associated with it was used to launder a couple $1 million. And I said, holy shit, that is not me. My identity got stolen. That account is not mine. I have nothing to do with this. And he's like, okay, well, it's your word against his word. Um, we have apprehended the criminal here, and we need you to come in for basically interrogation to tell us your side of the story. And that should have also been another red flag in my mind, because this was, I suppose, early COVID. I don't know, September, and I should have realized that they can't travel. I can't travel to China, of all places. This is not going to happen. uh, I should have realized that, I'm protected under Canadian laws. They can't just extradite me to China and then interrogate me. That's not going to happen. But I suppose, to their credit, they said I would be basically buying just like a commercial ticket. I would be traveling there of my own free will. It wouldn't be the government telling me to come.
Right.
So they told me to go fly to China so that they can interrogate me and find to the end of this. And I was really scared at this point, because all I hear about the Chinese government is just like, dictatorships. You basically, throw out your human rights and stuff like that. And I'm like, if I go to China, there is no guarantee that I am coming back,
Right.
like, ever, right? They're gonna lock me up, and then what's the Canadian government gonna do? Go invade China to bring me back? They're not gonna do anything. So I'm like, if I get on a plane and I leave for China, I'm probably not coming back.
Right.
And I was just basically terrified at this point of being extradited into China, not back to China. I was born in Vancouver, but
Extradited to
basically
China.
extradited to China.
Right.
And so I said, okay, no, I don't want to come. Like, I'll do whatever I have to do to cooperate with the investigation so that I can remain here in Canada, continue my studies. I want to graduate. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to like exploit people. I'm here to, the whole purpose of my life is basically I'm trying to help people. There's no way I would ever do this. And he's like, okay, well, we can see what we can do about it. But he's like, there's no guarantee. Right now we have this mandate that came from apparently like the Chinese HQ, the police HQ, Central Bureau, something China. And basically they have this mandate that he sent me, and he said, you need to delete this after I send it to you, because it's basically just like a memo that's circulating in the police headquarters.
Is it
And it
like
says like,
classified?
sort of, yeah. He
Okay.
said because there's an ongoing investigation, we just can't have information out. You're part of the investigation, so we'll just let you in on it. But it basically sent me this really formal looking document with a stamp and approval and like watermarks and stuff, I guess. And he said that it basically said that anyone associated with this investigation has to be extradited back to China and interrogated, no matter the cause, no matter where they are.
Okay.
I said, okay, I was just terrified. I told him that, I'm willing to cooperate with the investigation. He said, okay, we'll see what we can do. He contacts me like a couple weeks later, and he says that, okay, here are the things I need you to do. I need you to go get a new phone. I need you to go set up an account somewhere else. We were at this point just communicating over phone or Skype. And he said, okay, we don't know where your information was leaked. So it's possible your information was leaked through your phone. It's possible it was leaked through your emails, or your computer, or something. So we're going to avoid using your current phone. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. So I got a new phone. He's like, it doesn't really matter. You can get whatever you want. I'd recommend an iPhone or something because they have better encryption. You can just get the cheapest iPhone you can get. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I went on and got one. And they said, we'll reimburse you for the phone bills. We'll reimburse you for the phone fees at the end of the investigation. And I'm like, okay, sure. At this point, it was several weeks in, I had like fully trusted them. These were police officers. They didn't demand any information. They didn't demand for money. I'm like, these are probably people trying to help me. And so I did what they did, what they asked. I got the iPhone. I got a new iCloud account, and then specifically that was used to message them. In hindsight, this is what criminals do to protect themselves. They're not doing it to protect you. All right. So if you get a new phone, especially one that's an iPhone, your messages are all encrypted. It makes it really difficult for law enforcement to go in there and try to like decode your messages and stuff like that. If you go in there and you use a third-party program, Facebook, WhatsApp, I don't know about Instagram, but whatever. They'll like Skype, things like this. Third-party programs have their own encryption systems sort of on top of that. Makes it even harder for police to track. And this is what the RCMP or the police told me, was that basically, you know, anything these criminals ask you to do, it's all for their benefit, despite them making it sound like it's for yours. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, should have realized something was fishy.
But
But either way,
but the thing is, sorry to cut you off. Like,
yeah.
it's like, again, it's easy to beat yourself up over it. And I think unless someone has actually been in that situation, they're not gonna really know, because if you think about it, this is probably something they've done multiple times, right?
Mm,
So I'm assuming that you're not the first person that has happened to. So if, for example, they tried it on other people and it failed, they're gonna figure out, oh, how did we fail at that point, and then cover up that part so that the next
mhm.
person they try to do it with, they'll have that part covered, and they'll get further into their scam or whatever the case is. So
Yeah,
again, sorry,
they'll
go ahead.
improve upon it to make it better and better, right?
Exactly, exactly. But sorry,
That
go
makes
ahead.
sense. Yeah, yeah. I guess these people really are like professionals in the sense that,
Well,
someone who dedicates themselves to medicine, like a doctor, constantly trying to improve, their knowledge of the field. These are professionals that scam me. They're trying to improve their craft.
right, and the thing is, like with humans, like humans are creatures of behavior, right? So like, also, scammers generally know, not scammers, but like hackers, they generally know how to hack passwords, because people usually use, like, for example, their birthday or whatever their
Yeah.
case, right? So when people are in certain situations, I'm
Mhm.
assuming they already have an idea of the first action someone's gonna do, because like I said, people are creatures of behavior. So
Mhm.
they have probably figured out, okay, if we tell the person A, they're probably gonna do B, right? Just like when you ask them, oh, do you have? Is there, like, can you transfer me to the police? I think for them that was a green flag, because now they have an idea that you believe what they're telling them, as opposed to,
Mhm.
let's say for now you said, okay, you know what, thank you for this information, I'm gonna figure things out on my own. Then it would have been a bit harder for you to navigate what they wanted you to do. But again, like I'm saying, I'm just looking at it from the outside perspective, so it's easier. But again, like, you were in it, so of course, like, could
No,
have been
no,
a different story.
that makes total sense. I was told I told this whole story to my family, and um, they said it was really unfortunate that it happened to you. It's just like sort of wrong place, wrong time, but it was also the result of like you not knowing what kind of scams are out there, right? So just do your best to like educate yourself, educate others. Um, but they said don't beat yourself up over it. They've busted like I don't know other scammers in China before, and they find that these people basically have like a building, just like a Scotiabank tower, but instead of Scotiabank, maybe
Wow.
like the first 5 floors are rented out to these scammers, and they basically sit in these offices and cubicles and work in teams. So like one person is the UPS driver, the next
Holy.
person
Holy
is the
crow.
police officer, the other one is like a captain, the other one, and then they said each person they have scripts that work for different people. Elderly, maybe they're worse at electronics, so usually they're more electronic focused scams, like you sent a package and you overpaid or something like that. Um,
Wow.
and
Holy
then
crow.
they said that like different groups of people fall for different scams better than others.
Right.
So like a millionaire is not going to fall for the same scam a grandma's not going to fall for,
Right.
you know what I mean. And so they said don't beat yourself up over it. They're professionals and they have psychologists that work and try to figure out how people would react, and then
For
they try to
sure.
plan around that. So they're like, don't beat yourself up over it. Just learn and don't let it happen again.
Right. So
But
you were
but
mentioning the iPhone. They told you that, or the RCMP, I think, told you that this is they make you do things that benefit them. So, for example, getting the iPhone with all the encryption. I think that was the last part you were at.
yeah, and then after I got the iPhone, it was basically a constant communication back and forth. They said that there was a girl who was in a similar position as me, also scammed by the same guy, and she committed suicide because of the amount of debt that she accrued after losing all the money of being um, scammed by the guy.
So who told you
And
this? Sorry, was it the Canadian?
the police captain guy. He's like, I
Oh,
didn't
oh,
want to alarm you,
wow.
but um, the reason why we need to keep constant communication with you is because we need to make sure you don't do anything rash. They said we have cases where people were victims of identity theft, and these victims have lost a substantial amount of money, and because of that, they made some rash decisions and made the investigation harder. And so they wanted to make sure I was safe. They asked me to call in morning when I wake up, breakfast, lunch, dinner, so whenever I had a meal, and whenever I went to bed. They also said I would have to notify them if I ever leave the house and for what reason. And all of this in my mind was just like, oh, they're trying to watch out for me.
Mm.
They also said things like, uh, call us, or don't call us, text us the phone numbers of anything you don't recognize. You know, text us suspicious phone numbers in case these are fraudsters trying to reach out to you. And then they gave me a bunch of information about how to protect myself from fraud, like deleting things in your emails. Make sure you delete them from the trash box, garbage bin, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, these are really helpful hints. And so it just further entrenched my trust in them. And at this point, you know, I had fully committed to myself that, you know, these are police, these are trying to help me, these are people trying to help me. Um, but after a while, somewhere in October, mid-October, they said that, okay, the investigation currently is that the bank account, the guy who stole your identity is involved in the crime. We don't know if you're involved in the crime, but we need you to basically help sort of prove, not necessarily prove your innocence, but prove your willingness to aid in the investigation. And this would help you if this case ever went to court and you're put on trial, you know, it would make you look better in front of a judge that you'd sort of helped out. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, totally willing to help out at all, you know, in any way possible. And he said, okay, we're looking into a different facet of the investigation, which is the banking side. So we looked into the Chinese bank, but it appears that this guy has contacts in Vancouver, and it's possible Canadian banks were involved in it. And so he says, first, we need you to make sure that you didn't receive any money, you didn't receive any benefits from the laundering scheme. So we need to check out your money in your bank account. So I'm like, okay, yeah, fair enough. That makes sense. And so I'm like, oh, what do you need me to do? And they said, we just need you to send a portion of the money in your accounts over to this third party institute and in Hong Kong. And I thought, okay, this is kind of weird. Why third party institute? And he says, okay, because you're currently in Canada, we're in China. We want to make sure that the third party is like not biased. You know, we don't know if someone in China, like this guy could have had connections in a Chinese bank that might tip off the investigation. This guy could have connections in a Canadian bank because, you know, whoever sent that package is from Canada. And so, you know, we wanted to pick a third party place. And I'm like, okay, Hong Kong, I suppose seems fair enough. They gave me the information. I wired my money, about 12,000 to 13,000. And they said, okay, we'll look into it.
Sorry, did they
Uh,
request that amount?
they requested a very specific amount. It's like 12,800 something. I don't like a very, very specific amount. And it was probably about maybe 85% to 90% of my total savings,
Okay.
like of all I had.
Yeah.
And at this point, you know, I said, okay, $10,000. It's not, you know, it's not too much. You know, if this proves that I'm innocent, I'd be more than willing to spend it. Uh, but basically, they told me that the Third Party Institute is a place that specializes in money tracing, and so they'll look at the money that you have and see where all the money came from. Uh, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, that makes sense. And then later on, about 2 weeks later, they're okay, we got the money, it's currently being processed, and but we want to investigate your line of credit to see where the money, to trace the money that the bank had or something like that. They explained it in a way that I didn't quite understand, but it made sense at the time. And so they wanted to, basically they wanted to investigate my bank to see if it was connected somehow. And so I'm like, okay, sure. And so I sent them my line of credit, which for people who don't know what a line of credit is, it's basically the bank trusting you for whatever reason. Maybe you have good credit. Like me, I'm a medical or optometry student. They trusted me to eventually be able to pay back a set amount of money. So they currently basically loan it to you and you don't have to use it. It's just there in your bank. But basically, I had this money, and they said transfer a portion of that to us so that we can take a look at that.
So sorry, did they know you had a line of credit, or was that
They
something?
did.
Oh
Yeah, they
wow.
did. They asked me for, but it was because I had told them about it. So when
Ah, I
when
see.
they told me the whole situation about the banking info, they said in order for you to sort of comply with the investigation, we need to know how much money you have in your bank account. We don't need to know numbers. We don't need to know pins. We don't need to know any of your passwords, whatever. We don't care. They and I said like they didn't specifically say that, but that was the impression they gave. Because I asked like, do you need to know my bank number? And they're like, no, don't tell us. We don't care. Just give me the raw number and the type of account. So let's just say savings, 5,000. Line of credit, 90,000. Just give me the type and the raw number in it. And I thought this was them trying to protect my information and not leak it. In hindsight, they didn't care. They just wanted to know how much money I had, see how much I can take. This probably felt like, we got this guy on the line. We could probably just milk him for all he has. And they were right, but anyways. So after that, the whole situation sort of went downhill about a month later. So I transferred the money in October sometime, and uh, both payments, both the line of credit and the original, like 12,000, 13,000. And they said that, okay, we'll process it. It takes about a month and a half, and then we'll get back to you. And during the whole month and a half, they were messaging me still. They kept asking for reports and updates. They gave me like information about how things were progressing on the investigation side. And then they basically said that because I was complicit with the investigation, that they wouldn't ask me to come to China. And I was super relieved. And um, I didn't know what else that I could do. But I said basically I'd be willing to do anything for the investigation. They said, we'll let you know. And then eventually it was winter break, and I wanted to go see my parents for Christmas.
Your
So
parents
bought
in
a plane
Vancouver,
ticket.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
parents in Vancouver. And so I bought a plane ticket, went back home, and I told them this. They said, if you're ever leaving the country, we need to know in case it seems like you're escaping and trying to run away from the investigation. And I said, like, okay, on this date, from this date to this date, I'm going to be flying back to Vancouver. And they said, okay, we'll keep that in mind. And I basically thought that, while I was in Vancouver, I'm going to still maintain contact with them, but they stopped contacting me once I reached Vancouver. And I tried to rationalize it in my head, like, why would they stop contacting me when I reach Vancouver? And and in my head, I thought, okay, if say I'm a criminal suspect and I return back to the place where the original crime was supposedly committed, that seems a bit sketchy. It's possible I have accomplices. It's possible that, I'm trying to divulge information about the investigation. It made sense for them to cut contact with me until I return back to Ontario where I'm alone. And so I didn't think much about it until I came back to Ontario, where I was expecting them to contact me again, but they didn't. And that's when I started getting worried. I started getting suspicious. By now it's like January, New Year's, and I'm wondering, okay, what do I do? This basically at this point it suddenly just dawned on me that I just lost $100,000, give or take. Because I also spent money on the phone and the phone plans and whatnot, so this whole expenses. And I didn't know what to do. I was just like, okay, calm down, figure it out. First thing you need to do is contact police, like Canadian police, and ask for their assistance and their help. And the Waterloo police basically said that, oh shit, this is a lot of money. They're like, hold on, we're gonna get you to, like, our regional officers that normally work on this can't do anything about it. We need to get a detective on this case. So I'm like, okay, yeah, great, give me a detective. Got the detective, and he was helpful in the sense that he helped me see immediately that this was a scam. That odds are the money of recuperating my money in any form is practically zero. He
Yeah,
gave
slim
it
to
like a
none.
less than 1%.
Yeah.
And he said that basically the moment you send your money overseas, it's basically gone. Even if it's to the States, if you send it to the States, it's basically gone. Canadian police have no jurisdiction in another country. There's absolutely nothing they can do. At most, the RCMP can probably request the local law enforcement to freeze the account. But even that, the local law enforcement doesn't have to care. They're like, why do we care about this foreign investigation?
That's
We
more
have our own
paperwork for
problems to
them.
deal. Yeah, it's like they have their own problems to deal with, right?
Right.
So we don't care about this guy who lost his money from overseas. Um, and basically the Waterloo police said, one, there's not much. Like if we're being totally honest, there's not much we could do at this point. It's been a couple months since you sent the money. The money's probably been transferred into the account, withdrawn, spread into like another 10 different accounts. You know, it's probably all over the place and it's difficult to trace. And so he's like, I want to be very clear, you know, I want to help, but there's very little chance that you're going to get anything back. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I just want you to investigate this. And he's like, okay. Second problem. We in Waterloo, at least they do things on a case by on a first come first serve basis. So basically, if I want them to investigate this, it gets put into this queue, and I'm sort of put in this line. Whoever first comes gets their problems or gets their case passed on to a detective, and then the second person gets their case passed on to another detective, so on and so forth until it reaches me. And I'm like seventh or eighth in line or something like that.
Sorry, is it a
And
fraud queue or is it a queue for all
it's a
cases?
queue for all cases or
Holy
something
crow.
like
Okay.
that. So he's like, it's a first come first served basis. You're somewhere down there. You would be like the newest one in the list, basically on the bottom of the pile. And he basically said that, by the time we actually get to your case, it'll probably
Wow.
be about 6, 7 months to a year.
What?
And I'm like, okay. So any odds of you ever finding this money is going to be long gone.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. There's no way fraudsters are going to leave a tail that you could trace for months to a year later, right? It's probably all done. But, you know, me holding on to that 1%, I said, just, I throw it in that list. If nothing comes out of it, nothing comes out of it. I don't care. Something comes out of it, great. What do I have to lose, right? Um, but I wanted to make sure I did my due diligence, so I contacted the Vancouver police as well. They basically said, since the incident occurred while you're in Waterloo, it's not
Mm.
our jurisdiction. It's under the Waterloo police. But he's like, okay, but we do have contacts in Hong Kong that you can try and contact. And so they gave me the contacts, and then I contacted the Hong Kong police. I also went online to submit to the Hong Kong Police Department like a e-reporting, electronic reporting sort of thing. And about a month later, the Hong Kong police got back to me, and I was super suspicious at this point. I'm like, are you really the Hong Kong police? How do I know you're real? And so I went to the Hong Kong police's like official website where they had like just general inquiry questions, which I feel like, it was on a secure website. It's got the HTTPS. I figured it's probably legit. And I messaged them and they said, I said, this is the police that contacted me. This is his information, his badge information, his email, everything. Could you tell me more? He's impersonating a Hong Kong officer. I want to make sure he's a real Hong Kong officer. And they basically came back to me. It's like, thank you for contacting me. It's thank you for your inquiry. It's like this police officer belongs to the crime division or crime investigation division 3. He's a real officer, basically. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And I also asked the Vancouver police again. It's like, is this guy legit? And they said, yeah, he's legit. And then he sent a few files that required me to have a signature. And I'm like, okay, are these files corrupted? Do these files contain a virus? Am I going to open this email and then all of a sudden, my computer's just hijacked and I'm going to get some ransomware or something like that? And then I'm like, hey, can you like scan it with maybe like some police stuff to make sure this file is safe? And this was my mom's church friend. And so he's like, yeah, I can do that for you. And he said, it's safe. The officer's legit. And I'm like, okay, great. So I've been contacting him since, and he's been sort of updating me on what they could do on the Hong Kong side. But basically, they can't do much.
Right.
He said he would try to, he would try to freeze the account. But he says that when he tried to do it, when he tried to get like the permit, the bank looked into the account and said the account didn't have enough funds to freeze. Like the amount in the funds was so low that there'd be no point in freezing it. And then he basically just said that, that's kind of suspicious that someone would be able to transfer the money into that account and all of a sudden the account has no money in it again. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't freeze it, but it is suspicious and we'll look into it. So he's saying it's possible that they use the same account for a future investigation and that they'll just keep an eye on it. But basically the money's gone. It's
Yeah.
not in the account anymore. Hong Kong police can't freeze it. Vancouver police can't do anything about it. Waterloo police is not going to do anything about it until way later. Um, money's basically gone.
Okay, so
And
I'm
then that's,
assuming this is where we're at right now.
yeah, that's basically where we're at right now.
Man, so that sounds like pretty much like a movie. You pretty much have a movie on your hands. So although you may have lost, and I like to look at, the glass half full.
Mm.
Although you may have lost, that much money, you may now have a potential movie on your hands. And like I said, when I reached out to you, this could be something that, schools could adopt, or not only schools, but people in general could adopt to show, their kids, just so that they're aware that, these type of things occur, right? But
Mm.
what I wanted to know was, at what was the point? Like, what was the point when it just clicked to you and you're like, "Yo, I'm getting scammed." Like, was there a certain moment where you're like, "Oh shoot, like this is not going according to plan," or this doesn't make sense? Like, what was that actual point? Do you remember?
It was it was as I was sitting on the plane, ready to uh it was after Christmas when I'd flown back to Waterloo, and I was sitting on the plane. I'm just racking my head, going like, why haven't they contacted me yet? I'm in Waterloo. They should have said something. And then that was the point where I go like, it's been 2 weeks. Maybe they ran off with it. It's like if they kept contacting me, I wouldn't have said anything. I
Right,
would have still believed that, you know, I was I was being helped.
right. So it
But they
was a
stopped.
Sorry, so it was a lack of communication on their part, but I'm assuming the reason is because they already knew everything that you had in relation to what you gave them. So at that point, they were probably like, okay, well, there's nothing else we could get from him, so there's no point in keeping up the charade, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. They moved on to their next target or someone else, and it makes sense, I suppose. The moment they take enough, they probably do some sort of calculation, but they take enough from you that it profits them, but they don't take enough that you don't have enough money to live on for the rest of that duration. Like you have to pay your rent, to pay your bills, to pay your food, whatever expenses, right? You have enough to go about your daily life for the duration of the scam, and that you don't need to worry about money. And so if they took too much, you would be like, okay, I need my money back because I need to pay for these things, right? If they took too little, they don't profit. But if they take just like the right amount, you don't contact them, you don't ask for money back, you I don't know, they've definitely got this down to an art.
Right. You could still go about your daily life, right?
Yeah,
With the amount that they allow you to have from what you're describing, you can still go
yeah,
about your daily life. And again, when they're providing that perception that they're helping you and they're communicating with you, I guess you don't really go into panic mode where you just don't trust anyone, right?
yeah,
It's You're still on the hook, but at the same time, as you said, they're still making a profit based off of what they're trying to get from you.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I know when we connected, you had mentioned that there were some elements of the story that other outlets didn't want to cover. Did you mention it in the interview or in our conversation, or were there additional things that you wanted to mention that they didn't cover?
Uh, a few things, I suppose. One thing was that my whole story was too long for them to put in a 1 minute segment or even write an article about, right? They couldn't have included all the aspects of the story, and then that resulted in a lot of people sort of making up sort of things. It's like a lot of the comments on the CBC article. There's a CTV article now as well that I did with
Yeah,
them.
I saw that.
But the CBC article one had a ton of hateful comments on the bottom when it first came out because people were like, how does a student have so much money? It's a 23-year-old student loses $100,000. Yeah, bet he's an international student that has just the money, up his butt, and his parents pay for everything. He'll be fine. And then, after a while, I suppose after the story sort of spreads, I set up the GoFundMe in order to sort of give more background information, because the CBC article, I really felt like just didn't tell my story with enough info. It led to a lot of speculation. And so the GoFundMe was sort of just to here are the other tidbits that the interview didn't cover. I wanted people to know that, I'm not rich. This is from a line of credit. This is not money that I have just sitting in an account somewhere. I come from a background of like it's the typical middle income family. My parents immigrated to Canada for the purpose of like having a better life for their kids or better opportunities. And we're not rich by any means. We have one house. That's the house we live in. We don't own any other property or anything like that. Um, but the biggest thing that I wanted to say was that like I really wanted banks to be able to ask more questions, right? Like banks think it's suspicious when you e-transfer like $2,000. They're like, wait, hold up, $2,000? That's a lot of money. You sure you're e-transferring this amount? And then if you try to do anything else, they're like, okay, you make a big purchase on your credit card, and they're like, oh, hold up, we're gonna take a look into that. We're gonna give you a call to make sure you actually made that purchase yourself. And they didn't do any of that for me. I transferred $12,000, which apparently is a lot of money in their
Yeah.
standards if they're going to call about $2,000. But $12,000 is 6 times that, and they didn't question it. When you make a wire transfer, they ask you a few basic questions: where is it to, who is it from, or where are you sending it from, for what reason?
Yeah.
And they didn't ask any other questions. And then I really wish that they did, because maybe they're like, hey, we noticed you made that like $12,000 transfer earlier this month to Hong Kong. Why are you transferring another 83,000? That's a lot of money. What are you doing it for? And I would tell them, because when I went into the bank, these police officers had me wear earphones, and they would tell me what to say through my earphones.
Oh wow. The
And they
officers
said,
from China, quote unquote
yeah,
officer.
quote
Wow.
unquote. And they would be listening to everything that I said. And
Oh.
basically, and they said that we can hear everything that you're saying. We need to make sure you say these things specifically. Try to act calm. Don't look suspicious. Don't raise any suspicion. The reason they gave was because it's possible that the bank had, some accomplice associated with the investigation or
Wow.
something. In reality, obviously that's not the case. These are
Yeah.
just average working citizens from Waterloo, but they made it seem like the accomplice could be anywhere, sort of thing. But I'm there sort of just like going through the bank standard questions, and they didn't answer. They didn't seem suspicious that a student would take out their entire line of credit and want to send it overseas. Like a student that's probably never had more than $15,000 in his bank account suddenly wants to transfer $83,000 overseas. It's like anybody can see that's kind of weird, right? You don't even have to work in a bank to know, to maybe ask a few other questions. And they didn't do any of that. They're like, oh, okay, is this all? Yeah, okay. And then I sent it, transferred, done, cool, right?
Right. And you know what's crazy?
And
Because I used to work in a bank, right? So I think the threshold is, I think it's 10,000 or $9,999.99. So if you make a transaction, like if you try to withdraw that amount, or if I think if you deposit that amount, there's like a red flag, and they investigate. Now, I'm wondering if it's because you were sending that money to a different country that the bank was kind of like hands off, because I'm assuming at that point there's really nothing like authorities here could do once it goes to another country. But like you said, you would hope that the bank would say, maybe do a bit more due diligence in regards to, why this money is being wired or why it's being sent out. But I think it's also because maybe they don't want to do additional paperwork themselves. Were they
Mhm.
getting a cut off of the fees? Like there was a fee to transfer it, right?
Yeah, there was a fee to transfer.
Right. So they probably getting money from it. So the bank is
Hmm.
like, well, if we stop this, we're not going to get any money from the transfer. And at the end of the day, they really, if it's a scam, they really can't do anything, right? So
Hmm.
they're probably thinking to themselves, you know, because the bank is in it to make money themselves as well, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, for anyone listening, this is Scotiabank, by the way.
you call it out Scotia. Oh my gosh. So did they contact you afterwards with any?
No,
No.
no. Even the police told me that, it's possible because the money that you sent, was a large amount. It's possible they'll contact you for some follow-up questions.
Right.
They never did.
Yo,
And so
man.
even the fraudsters were anticipating it. They're anticipating that someone would call, but no one did. And
Hmm.
and I really wish someone did. I really wish someone called was just like, hey, so there's a trend in wire frauds nowadays, um, you might want to look out for scams that tell you that, you're being implicit in an investigation, scams that, are like romance related of a partner suddenly needing help overseas or something like that. You should be careful for those. And then that would have instantly triggered something in my mind going like, this could be a scam,
Right.
and then I would have been like, give me back my money.
Right. Right. Right.
But like, they didn't do anything, and I was really hoping that it did. And then I told CBC about it, and they didn't put it in the article, or maybe they did. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But the Scotiabank's not the only bank that needs to sort of up their due diligence. There's someone else in Vancouver, Asian like me, fell for a very, very similar scam, and she lost more than I did. She lost like 300,000, four
Wow.
hundred thousand. She lost her entire like retirement savings, like everything to the scam. And she did it with TD Bank and like a few other banks. Basically, all the other Canadian banks except for Scotiabank. And then now you can probably throw Scotiabank on the list. So every bank needs to sort of do more in terms of like preventing fraud.
So was
All they
her?
have,
Sorry.
sorry, yeah, yeah.
No. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say all they have, I think, are like just signs outside that go like "Beware of fraud."
Yeah.
It doesn't describe the fraud at all. It just says "Beware." I'm like, that's not helpful.
Yeah. 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 So was her story similar to yours?
Yeah, very, very similar.
And how'd you
Uh,
guys connect? She reached out to you after your story was
she
published?
she posted to CBC first,
Oh.
and I saw her story, and I said, "Holy crap, this is very, very similar." And so, I reached out to CBC to see if I can get her contact information because I wanted to just tell her, I fell for something similar. We're sort of in the same boat. I hope we could give each other support, something like that. And eventually I did make contact with her, but CBC at that point also said that, hey, because your story is similar, we also want to do sort of like an interview with you. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I don't mind telling other people, it is like Scam Awareness Month apparently, so or Fraud Awareness Month, something like that.
Right.
And I said, okay, yeah, let me do my part, because this whole thing took over like months to plan, to execute, right? So building trust is not like a one day thing. They did it over months. And I'm hoping that, this reaches someone out there, particularly those in the Asian community who I think seems to be more targeted towards because they all speak Chinese. Sorry, I shouldn't say Asian, I should just say Chinese community.
Chinese. Yeah.
Um, but I really wanted someone to see the GoFundMe, to see the CBC article, to see anything, see this video. And I'm really hoping that they'll see it and be able to relate, to see how this story, or at least this trend, is similar to theirs. Maybe it's got similar red flags or something like that, and that they stop it, that they don't send that money. I'm really hoping it reaches someone, and someone reaches out to me and say like, hey, your story helped prevent me from sending my money to them. That would be the biggest sort of reward
Right.
that I'm sort of hoping to get out of this.
Right. And that's a beautiful thing because right now there's an opportunity to, go a bit deeper into what happened. Like, so for example, if someone's just reading a CBC article, I guess you were able to relate to it because it happened to you with the other girl when you contacted the other girl. But let's say, for example, we have a student who's maybe in like the first portion of the quote unquote the scam, not quote unquote, but the actual scam. They happen to stumble on this video and things start clicking. As you said, now they have an opportunity to say, hey, hold on a sec. This seems a little too familiar. So before they end up, giving away 500,000, because who knows, what other people have been sending these guys. Maybe, as you said, it'll give an opportunity for them to prevent, them from doing anything. And you did mention that you had that you put up the GoFundMe, and you got a lot of support with the GoFundMe. So, for anyone who wants to support you, and I do encourage people to go support you, because again, this is an opportunity for other people to be protected. As you said, the banks may not be doing their part in protecting people who are in your situation. So how could they go about supporting your GoFundMe if they resonate with your story or whatnot?
Uh, if they want, they can just share the story. I'm not here to ask for like money. I don't want you to pity me, sort of thing. Like, to be able to empathize with my story is more than enough. To feel compelled enough to feel like you want to share it is even more love towards me. Because if you share the story, it's possible that you prevent one of your friends from getting scammed, and that's what I think it's all about. The only way to sort of prevent these from happening is by spreading awareness. It's not to catch these criminals, because the business is so lucrative that it's never going to stop. People are always going to be in a vulnerable state at some point in their lives. Everyone's going to fall for a scam. Maybe not necessarily a scam, but everyone's going to fall for something at some point in their lives when they're vulnerable. It could be a romance issue. It could be just like a friendship thing. It could be, your best friend betrayed you, something like that. But everyone's going to fall for something at some point. And it's just like, it's about just protecting yourself, that when you are vulnerable, that you don't make emotional decisions. And I'm really hoping that the story sort of can resonate people in that way, that learn from me, see the red flags of a normal typical scam, but also learn that don't make decisions based on emotion. Always talk to family, talk to friends, find someone you can trust. Even if you just be like, hey, hypothetically, if someone sent you a or someone gave you a call and said that you're implicit in a crime that you didn't commit, what do you think about that? I'm just asking for a friend, sort of thing. It's like, just get a second opinion. People are going to be like, yeah, that's kind of sketchy, I wouldn't do it. Oh, the biggest thing that that people our age fall for are job recruitment scams.
Oh, okay.
And so I have a friend that basically, what they do is they recruit you, give you a good pay, like, whatever, $21 an hour and stuff. And it seems like a legit job. If you do your research, the company exists. They've got records, they've got history, they've got, all these websites set up and links. And basically what these criminals do is they sort of buy the website off of a company that recently went under. And so everything is still sort of fresh. The history and everything is all real, but this company no longer exists, but they kept the website up. And they'll spoof their emails, they'll spoof their phone numbers so that it matches what's on the website.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially what they do is they ask you to be the middleman, the person who I sent my money to in Hong Kong, likely a middleman, maybe doesn't even know they're part of a scam. All they were told is that this is like an accounting job. All you have to do is receive money in your account, transfer it somewhere else.
Got you.
And they don't even know that they're taking in laundered money until police come knocking about their accounts and stuff like that.
But by that time, the people who actually orchestrated everything is long gone.
They're long gone. They took the money that you sent to that third account, and then they ran off with it. They withdrew it or whatever. And what are you gonna do, right? Let's say the Hong Kong police freeze the account, catch the person that I sent the money to, and they didn't know they were being scammed as well, right? And what am I gonna do? Am I gonna sue her for the money that I, that I sent to her?
Yeah.
That's just putting her under as well. That's so, like, there's no win-win situation in this case, right? Everyone loses except for the people who are scamming everyone.
Right.
And it's just like, the only way you can prevent it is by telling people. It's not by getting police to go catch these people. It's not going to happen.
Right. Now, just to echo what you said about the pay, or not having to support you through paying you, I want to go on record too that, I didn't exchange any money with you to do this interview,
Oh, yeah.
and the beautiful thing about you doing this interview is your courageous nature, because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who situations like this happen to, who would not go out in the public eye to give people their story, maybe because they feel embarrassed. Because from the outset, when you hear, oh, someone lost a certain sum of money, as you said in the comment section of the CBC article, I guess people were directing, negative sentiments towards you. But it's like you're just out there to tell your story. And I guess right off the bat, they're thinking, oh, he's doing this to make some money, right? Or he's doing this to pull the heartstrings of other people to get a come up off of it. But, I just want to highlight, how courageous you were in doing this because, again, especially me living in Toronto, I know how the idea of other people's perception on others really affects, how people live out here because there's a real big idea that if they do something outside of the social norm or if they're perceived a certain way outside of the social norm, it could really affect them negatively. So like I said, I really want to commend you on that. And even myself, I've been scammed. Excuse me. I've been scammed myself. Now, it wasn't to the tune of, the amount you were, but I
Yeah,
remember.
maybe not as elaborate or something. Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah,
Maybe it
not as
wasn't as
elaborate.
elaborate. Yeah.
But you remember the PS2?
Yeah.
So the PS2, way back in the day when the PS2 came out, there was a guy I knew from the block, and he was going around telling everyone he could get access to PS2s. He's like, man, we have PS2s that fell off the truck. And he was chopping them for maybe $200. So back then, the PS2 in the store, I think the brand new one was going for $400, $500. So I'm like, yeah. You know what? I'm going to go get one. Long story short, he met up with me by a building, the side of a building. No, he met up with me by the side of a building. And so I was like, yeah, I want to buy a PS2. So what happened was a next dude came out of nowhere. And then so the guy I knew was like, yeah, pay him for the PS2 and he'll just come back and get you the PS2. So I pay the dude. And bro, I was standing there literally for maybe an hour, 2 hours. The other guy was standing with me who I knew was standing with me. He didn't say, let's go. He was just waiting there until I was like, you know what? This is probably a friggin' scam. So I ended up dipping. Bro, I ended up dipping. Every time I saw this dude riding around the block, the first thing he would tell me is, yo, I'm working on getting that PS2 for you. And I was like, yeah, no problem. But, when I look at it, I'm like, situations could always be worse. Something like that now makes me very skeptical of when people say to me they could get things for cheaper.
For a cheaper price.
Right,
Yeah.
for a cheaper price, or they could get things, quicker or whatever. There's always a catch. And now I'm a person who would prefer to buy things brand new. If I have to go to the store and buy something brand new, I'd rather do it just in case. If there's something wrong, I know where to go to get an exchange.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
It's
there's
if you want it cheaper, just wait for it to go on sale or something at a store.
right.
Don't.
Unless I really, and then obviously I didn't learn. A couple years later, I bought the PS3 from one of my buddies, but he was a real close buddy of mine, and they had it in the box. They opened it up. It could have not worked, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take the risk, and it ended up working, right? But like you said, there's a learning aspect to every situation. It's just a matter of what was the cost of that learning aspect. But regardless on what the cost was, you never know. Someone may have paid a higher price for that. You said a girl lost 300,000. So think about if you were in her shoes, right? There's always a silver lining, and I think that's something that everyone should know. So Aaron, and I think you mentioned that some things that people could take, like other students could take from it. I believe you did mention that people should be a bit more diligent or whatever the case is. I don't know if there's other elements that people should take from this if you want to provide, maybe some tips or whatever.
Yeah, it's basically it sums down to if I had to if anyone was watching this and you just skip to the end or something like that, things to take away, look out for red flags. Okay, this is what the RCMP told me. Okay, if someone ever asks you to send money overseas, even if it's the US, don't do it. They can't trace it. It's hard. If someone that you don't know requests for money, don't send them money unless you personally sort of like, I don't know, maybe see them, they're a friend of a friend, and somehow you have at least some sort of a relationship with them. It might be okay, but if it's a large amount of money, don't do it. If you ever get told to go, get an iPhone, get like another device, if you're ever told to go on a third-party software program sort of thing for messaging, don't do it. Know that phone numbers that you receive can be spoofed. I received a call from someone claiming to be Tony Stark.
Iron Man.
Yeah, it literally said Tony Stark, and I'm like, what the hell? Um, but um, phone numbers can be spoofed, emails can be spoofed, every websites can be spoofed. Everything that you see can be spoofed, and so don't trust any of it.
Right.
Uh, your money is your money in your account. No one can touch it. Banks will only help you if someone had withdrawn money without your consent or taken it. If you ever personally moved any numbers around, sent anything, that's considered like a personal choice, and they don't cover you for any of that. So don't do it.
I guess
Don't
that's what
trust banks.
passwords are for too. So they'll say if someone else entered the password on your behalf, they'll say,
Yeah,
"Hey, how did they get the password? You must have given it to
yeah,
them." So you're on the hook for that. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So any anything that makes it look like that you did it on your own, banks won't help you for that. They're very adamant about protecting their own money, unless it's like some tiny amount. If it's some tiny amount, then they'll be like, "Here, have your money back." We got to maintain our image and improve our customer service ratings. But if it's a large amount, they're going to be like, "No way, we're not paying for that."
right.
Um, but yeah, I just wanted people to know there is a GoFundMe if you want to know more, I suppose. But this interview was incredibly in depth. You probably, unless you want to read the full report of what I submitted to the police on my Facebook page, I suppose you could link it. I don't know. But it's there if you want to read it. GoFundMe is there if you want to read it. If you're generous and you feel like you want to donate, don't feel pressured to. But if you felt like you related to the story, you're more than welcome to donate. If you just want to share, that's best way that you could spread the message and to prevent your friends from getting defrauded in a similar manner or by similar scheme. You could share, and that's it. Thank you so much for this interview, by the
No,
way.
man, thanks for being on it. This is crazy. Like I said, this felt like a movie, man. I was about to go grab some popcorn because I said to myself, this is crazy. Like, and in my mind, I was thinking that as you were telling the story, there could be certain things that I could say, hey, hold on a sec. Didn't this seem like a red flag or whatever? But how you were describing it, it was like they knew how to cover their tracks, right? Or they knew how to
Yeah,
lead you along to make you think that, oh, everything's okay. Like from right off the rip, if they're not even asking you for additional information, they put you in the position to want to give the information to
mm,
them, right? So it's like reverse psychology. And the only way you could have really, blew the lid off of things is if instead of going through their direction or whatever, is if, let's say, for example, you just said, you know what, let me just go to the local police just to see if something's happening with my name or whatever, and then at that point, who knows, it could have things could have ended up differently. But yeah, this is something that anyone pretty much could get caught in based on how you were describing it. So I appreciate you giving your story here.
yeah, for sure. If I had just, you know, had the extra foresight to contact, Chinese police and the Canadian police, problem would have been solved then and there.
Right.
If I had just done my own research, looked up the UPS worker, I could have just hung up, be like, okay, thank you for telling me, hung up, and then called UPS, looked up the directory, look up, I don't know, call the store that they supposedly came from and like, hey, do you have a Tony Chan? If you don't, oh, okay, that's kind of suspicious. Hang up. I
Right.
immediately would have known that it's not the same guy. So like, do your own research.
Right.
My 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 mom's Vancouver friend, Vancouver police friend, said that when he has to call people and he has to call people in to come to the station for a statement or something, they do ask the same question. It's like, how do I know you're real police? And he doesn't get offended by that because it shows that this person has the awareness of stuff that's been going on, and that they just want to confirm. And he said, okay, I'll give you my name, my full name, my police ID identification badge number, and you can look it up yourself, right? I- The best way you can do is just don't take any links from other people. Don't click them. Don't use the phone numbers that they provide or the emails they provide. Don't look that up. Do your own sort of independent third-party research. Go on their website. I don't know. Go into the yellow pages or something like that, and then try and figure it out from there. See if you can backtrack and see if this person's really real. If they are, they'll show up. If they're not, there's your answer.
Right. All right, man. Aaron, thank you very much. If there's anything else you want to add, just reach out to me. Let me know.
Mhm.
Otherwise, this is a great interview in my opinion. Very in depth. And yeah, if there's any not results, but like if there's any new
Like
developments or
updates or
whatever,
something. Yeah.
yeah, and you want me to post it or let people know, more most likely or most def, just hit me up, let me know, man. But other than that, thank you very much for doing this interview, and hopefully things get back to normal for you, if they already haven't, hopefully
Mhm.
soon. But and hopefully it hasn't affected your studies, because I'm pretty sure it's been tough having to juggle dealing with that, and then you're doing optometry, right? So,
Mhm.
but other than that, thanks, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is a great interview. I'm glad I got to talk about a lot of this because there's only so much you can write on a page, and you can't really say everything on a page because it doesn't really make sense necessarily. If you're writing a story, you have to consider how the story flows, right? If if all of this was put into words and I stuck that on my GoFundMe page, it would probably max out the word count on that description,
Right.
and no one would want to read it or hear it. It's just too long for
Right.
people to want to focus on it. So I had to cut some stuff out, and I'm really glad I got the chance to share this.
Right. And
And
if you ever think that it would help out as opposed to having to explain it over again, once the interview is done, if you want, you could just link it in the GoFundMe, so that if people want to actually hear the whole story, now they can hear it from your mouth. They don't have to go to another outlet such as, the CBC or CTV and see a compressed version.
mm,
This is what happened from point A to Z and where we're at right now. So,
yeah, I think I might do that. That would be that would save me a lot of time, I guess.
right,
If
right.
anyone ever asks for the whole story, be like, hey, there's the video you could watch.
Right, right. Because you've probably had to, say this story multiple times on multiple
Yeah,
occasions,
yeah.
but it is what it is. But
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely thankful for all the people that have shared. I'm extremely thankful for all the people that have already donated. People who message me about, um, how I'm doing, is there
support,
any way that they can help? The support has
yeah,
just been overwhelming.
right,
I'm really thankful for it. I still get a lot of hate comments, especially on Reddit, Reddit CVC. People will go on the GoFundMe and personally message how stupid that I was,
right,
and say that how I'm just here to take people's money, and I'm like, did you read it? I'm like, ah,
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
but
You can't please everyone, but
yeah,
again,
I'm glad these people are cynical of my story. They're like, this is a scam. He's just trying to take your money, and I'm like, okay, I hope with this mentality you never get fooled.
right,
You know,
right, because they may be in your position. So,
yeah, yeah.
but anyways, Aaron, man, thanks a lot. So yeah, I'll just let you know when this is up. But other than that, for the people who are watching, this is Aaron, second year optometry student, uWaterloo, scammed of 100,000. Now he's back on his feet, hopefully. And the great thing about it is, it seems like you're in a good mental place right now. But this is just my perception. I'm not a psychiatrist or anything. But it goes to show, whenever something bad happens to you, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and there are people that will be there to support you, even if there are people there that are hating on what you're doing. You just got to keep moving, keep trucking, and your story could help someone else. So, in the meantime, in between time, it's the milkman. And as I always say, I'm off this easy, fam.